Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with Spanish-style French toast. That's right, I'm going to show you my take on Torrijas, which is basically French toast, bread pudding, and crème brûlée all rolled into one. I know that is a lot of things, which is why we should probably get right to it. And to get started, the first thing we'll do is cut some nice thick slices of bread. And I'm talking very thick. Okay, I think we want these at least 1.5 inches to 2 inches thick. And by the way, this bread's supposed to be really stale. So time permitting, after we slice it, we let it sit out until it's pretty much dry. But who the heck has those kind of time management skills anymore? All right, not me. So what people like us will do is throw these on a pan and then pop those in a 250-degree oven for about 20 to 25 minutes, at which point we'll pull them out and transfer them onto a cooling rack. And if we let those sit there for about a half hour or until they're fully cooled, we should end up with some very nice simulated stale bread. And what we can do while we wait for our bread to stale is put together our infused milk soaking liquid, which starts with some white sugar, a nice big pinch of salt, followed by a healthy dose of cinnamon, or a cinnamon stick if you're fancy. We will also do some pure real vanilla extract, as well as a couple whole cloves, or a nice big pinch of ground clove. And then we're definitely going to want to add some citrus zest to this. And I'm going to do both orange and lemon. And a vegetable peeler works great for this, but try not to use too much pressure, because we only want that zest on the surface and not the white pith underneath, since that's where all the incredibly fragrant citrus oils are. So less white is more right. And then speaking of white, we'll finish up with some whole milk. And once that's been transferred in, we'll grab a whisk and we'll head to the stove. And we'll give this a quick stir and we'll set our heat to medium. And we will wait for this to come up to a simmer. And do not under any circumstances wander away, because milk likes nothing more than to boil up out of your saucepan, which will happen in literally like 3 seconds. So make sure you're standing right there. And when it starts to foam up, give it a stir. And also we can reduce our heat down to medium-low. And we will simply let this simmer fairly gently for about 5 minutes, which is going to allow all those amazing flavors to infuse into the milk. And after 5 minutes, we'll pull that off the heat. And we will strain it right back into the same measuring cup we use for our milk. And by the way, you're watching a little bit of Food Wish history, since I've never once strained something like this and not spilled some. So that was a nice change of pace. And by the way, we just made twice as much milk mixture as we needed to soak our bread. Since what I think we should do is add half to this dish, in which, as I just said, we will soak our stale bread. And then we'll take the remaining half, and we will transfer that into our rinsed out saucepan that we used for the first step. And what we'll do with this portion is whisk in 3 egg yolks, because I think the best way to serve our Spanish-style French toast is with a beautiful crème anglaise, which is nothing more than a very simple custard sauce. So what we'll do once those yolks are whisked in is set our heat somewhere between medium-low and medium, and we will stir this pretty much constantly with a spatula, or in my case, spoonula, to be technically correct. And we will do that until this mixture thickens slightly, or at enough to just barely coat the back of a spoon. And once it does, we will strain that and then refrigerate it. And that makes an absolutely perfect sauce to serve with our Torrijas. So like I said, we'll cook that stirring on medium-low until it starts to thicken up, and it sort of coats the back of a spoon, which is kind of hard to see on this silicone spoonula, but you'll be able to tell as it will be just slightly thick. And once it has gone far enough, we need to pull it off immediately and strain it quickly, which unfortunately I did not do. I forgot to turn off the heat while I grabbed the strainer, so technically this overcooked a little bit, but it was actually still pretty much okay, and I grabbed a small ladle to get the rest pushed through the strainer. And while the appearance wasn't quite as silky and smooth as I wanted, the mouthfeel was very, very smooth, so it really wasn't a big problem. And that's it, our sauce is done, and we'll let that cool and refrigerate it until we need it. And then we can grab our stale bread and transfer it into the first half of that milk mixture, and we will toss it back and forth until it's fully saturated. And it might not look like it when you first start, but after letting that sit for a few minutes and tossing it back and forth a couple times, it's going to somehow, some way, absorb almost all of that liquid. Or you might have a couple tablespoons left over, or you might not. It all depends on how stale your bread was. And then once soaked, what I like to do is transfer it onto a pan so I can keep it in the fridge and nice and cold until we're ready to use it. And then the only other thing we need to do is beat some eggs, since the major difference between Spanish-style French toast and American-style French toast and French-style French toast is that for this, the egg component is actually separate from the milk component and not mixed in together. I know that is weird, but you're going to be shocked at how amazing it comes out. So what we'll do is transfer our soaked bread in, and to make the filming easier, I'm just going to do 2 pieces. And we will let it sit for a couple minutes, turning it over a few times to make sure it's thoroughly coated. And you know what? I really should have used a square dish for this, since if I use round, I really need the curve of the crust to match the curve of the dish, which is why I just turned those around for no apparent reason. But I did catch myself and thought, what the heck are you doing? So I did not repeat that same craziness for the next one. But anyway, the point is make sure those are coated thoroughly in beaten egg, at which point we can head to the stove, where I've preheated about a ½ inch of olive oil over medium heat, and we will carefully transfer our slices of bread in. And even though this is very commonly deep fried, this shallow fry method works great, and you can, if you want, even do it in a little bit of oil, although you just don't get the same crusty effect. But anyway, what we'll do is fry that for a few minutes per side, or until it's cooked through, nicely browned and kind of puffed up. And because our bread slices are so saturated, we want to be very careful for this first turn, and not just so we don't splash the oil, but we do not want these slices of bread breaking apart. And yes, once again I had to turn the bread to match the curve of the pan. I'm sorry, I can't help myself. And some of you will do the exact same thing. Oh yeah, you know who you are. And the cooking it till it's brown part is pretty easy to figure out. But let me show you what I mean by puffed up. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and flip these over now that the second side is cooked. And you're going to notice how the surface is kind of domed a little bit. Right, that means the inside is now very hot and cooked through, and everything's expanding, which is giving it that appearance. Oh, and enjoy that puffiness while it lasts, since pretty much as soon as this comes out of the oil, it's going to deflate, and the surface will sink back down a little bit. But that's fine. That's going to help create that perfect custardy texture inside. And then at this point, we have to decide how we're going to finish this. Right, the simplest way would be to toss it in some cinnamon sugar, but I'm going to go fancy restaurant style and transfer on about a rounded tablespoon of turbinado sugar, or you can use a demerara sugar, or brown sugar, or white sugar. And then we'll grab our handy blowtorch, and we will, as they say in the business, brûlée the top. And not only is this going to give us a gorgeous, crispy, shiny crust, but that bittersweet element that you get when you burn sugar is such a perfect pairing with the other flavors here. But if you don't have one, or you can't be trusted with a blowtorch, like I said, just tossing in sugar is totally fine. So that'll be up to you. I mean, you are, after all, the Don Quixote of whether you should brûlée. But either way, to plate up, we will put some of our now cold crème anglaise on a plate, and then we'll place our stunningly gorgeous Torrijas on top, along with 3 strategically placed raspberries. And that's it. I grabbed a fork and knife and went in for the official taste. But before that, let's go in for the official listen. And what makes this so insanely good is the combination of that crispy, bittersweet brûlée, along with our fried egg batter crust, and then inside we have that very, very soft, very moist, luxuriously milky center. And when you eventually get all 3 of those components in one bite, it is nothing short of magical. And as I said in the intro, this is just my take on Spanish-style French toast. Right, apparently there's like dozens of different versions. And while I do think one of the keys here is having the egg component separate from the milk component, there are versions where you mix all that together and use that to soak the bread, more like we would for a traditional American-style French toast. But personally, I've had plenty of American-style French toast, which is exactly why this Spanish-style French toast appealed to me so much. And I really do love everything about it, which is why whether you brûlée the top or you just toss yours in a little bit of sugar, I really do hope you give this a try soon. So please follow the links below for the ingredient amounts, a printable written recipe, and much more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.